Hi, great to see you here virtually at the 2020 online conference on the African Commons. Thank you for opening my presentation. My name is David Collste. I'm a Marie Curie PhD Fellow at the Stockholm Resilience Center in Stockholm, Sweden. My research focuses on the 17 SDGs and how they can be reached within the 9 planetary boundaries by integrating disciplines, models, stakeholders, and scales. The paper I present today is called Three Horizons for the SDGs, a cross-scale participatory approach for transformative pathways. It is part of a global research endeavor called The World in 2050 that seeks pathways of how the 17 SDGs can be reached within the planetary boundaries and sets a longer time frame to 2050. The research embarks from the question, who develops the future vision? Is it in the hands of the few or the many? And the notion that to change the regional and local dynamics, to reach the SDGs within the planetary boundaries, different narratives need to be developed. The notion that for the SDGs to be successful, they need to be grounded in the local and national realities is very much the argument in Sander van der Leuve, one of the co-authors of the paper I'm presenting's book, Social Sustainability, Past and Future, Undoing Unintended Consequences for the Earth's Survival. We decided to implement this thinking in the form of a participatory approach, where pathways to the SDGs within planetary boundaries were explored. We embarked from the following premises. A systems perspective and SDG integration has to be thought. The process should allow for multiple and alternative perspectives on these pathways. And the participants should feel ownership of the pathway narratives that are being explored. We realized this in what came to be the 2018 African Dialogue on the World in 2050. The big question is, can the SDGs be reached within the planetary boundaries, and what are the likely pathways to get there? We are in Kigali, Rwanda, and we are trying to get perspectives from different parts of Africa on how these pathways to reach the SDGs within the planetary boundaries can look like.
We designed a process based on a pathways approach to give voice to African aspirations in relation to the SDGs, with two goals in mind. First, to provide relevant insights to policymakers involved in the SDG implementation, but also to provide input to the design of alternative global and regional scenarios, bridging the scales and unveiling tensions between possible pathways.
To transform a society, or you want to transform your own self, you've got to figure out where the points of power are, and then you know appropriately how to build the necessary coalitions of people or organizations so that you can tackle the status quo scenarios that we want to change.
What we need to do is to help build a wider bottom-up movement into this direction.
The method we developed was based on the 3 horizons, and we call it the 3 horizons for the Sustainable Development Goals. It focuses on 3 different horizons. We began with Horizon 3, the system we wanted to form to, with the question, how would the desirable future look like when it comes to agriculture and food systems? We then moved to Horizon 1, the system we want to transform from. What features would we like to get rid of in the current system? And we ended on the horizon 2. What changes and innovations are needed to break the current dominant features that are undesirable to reach the alternative, desirable futures of the horizon 3? Also, we used 4 different colors to differentiate between the SDGs. The People SDGs, the Prosperity SDGs, the Planet SDGs, and the Peace and Partnership. We used different color post-it notes in the participatory process to make sure that all of these different ones were included. This is how the overall process looked like. As I mentioned before, we began with the desired futures, moved to the present concerns. After that, we broke up the groups and had a World Cafe, where participants from different groups rotated to see the other pathways that were being explored. And after that, in the morning of the second day, we discussed the pathways in relation to the global perspectives, as outlined in the shared socioeconomic pathways. And then the third step focused on, as I mentioned before, how to get to the desired futures. We ended everything with a plenary session where we put light on convergences and divergences between the different pathways that were being explored. Each of the 3 horizon steps had 3 outcomes. The first was the actual 3 horizons for the SDG diagram. The second was a list of divergences, where there were tensions between different pathways, or participants had different views. And the third one was a creative product. This included, for example, a letter from the future to the present. It included a list of hashtags from the future, and pictures and drawings. The creative products that were developed also assisted the groups in getting hold of and understanding the future and the different views better. The different views were also captured, and one of the tensions that I can mention is the one with population, where some participants argue that the growing population increases the consumption footprints, which increases natural resource use, increases the food consumption, and which is bad for food security. While other participants emphasized that the bigger population means an increased young workforce, which can spur innovations, efficiency, production, which is positive for food security. Concluding, methodologically we developed a new participatory method for visioning based on the SDGs, in which the SDGs are integrated and contrasting views are captured. And content-wise, the process also led to new pathways that can be compared with other SDG modeling and visioning, and be used as basis for implementation for the SDGs in modeling exercises. Thank you for listening and for opening my presentation.